Do the exterior decks and patios look like they're well maintained? Is the paint falling off the property? And yeah, these sound like little things, but they may be indications of larger problems that may be going on with the building, because a poorly maintained building is going to create problems for someone who's renting there.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. My name's Rick Nusky. I'm the luckiest man alive. I get to interview some wonderful people, and today I have on the line with me Justin Pogue. How are you, Justin?
Doing well. It's a great day in San Jose today.
Oh, absolutely fantastic weather where we are as well. Now, Justin and I have recently talked about his venture rentalsecrets.net and his involvement with the rental community. Now, before we jump into this, Justin, I would love to share with the My Future Business audience a little bit about your background and how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because real estate was not my original plan. So after I finished college, I came back to the Bay Area, which is where I grew up, and worked in a corporate job for a little while, and then went back to graduate school. My plan after getting my MBA was to go into management consulting, but I graduated in 2002, which was also the year that the dot-com bubble was bursting.
Yes.
A lot of the management consulting companies were trying to figure out what their new business plan was going to be, and they didn't need new people to help them work on that. So I kind of shifted gears into real estate, which is actually a good lesson for a lot of the people who might be listening. Is the world changes while you're in school, so having a plan B is not necessarily a bad idea. But from that point, started working with my parents and acquiring some real estate and really going into property management and managing that real estate, finding residents, marketing the property, taking that property that might be not the best property but in a good neighborhood, and renovating that so it's something that somebody would want to actually live in. And that's kind of how I got started in the real estate world and in the world of property management. How I kind of got to the book was the last job I had. I was managing 200 apartments in the San Francisco Bay Area, and after I left that job, somebody suggested that I take a look at writing a book. And when I went into the bookstore, all the books that were there were written for owners, managers, and investors. There really wasn't anything written from the renter perspective, which I thought was kind of odd because every month, the renters are the ones that are bringing the money to the table for everybody in this industry. So I decided to write my book from that perspective, and that's how Rental Secrets got born.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I've been looking through your bio, and I love the cover of this book. It's really, really quite attractive. How it's got that torn sort of cover. It looks great.
Yeah, I mean that came through actually doing some focus groups and trying out some different cover ideas. But it really speaks to the fact that as people go through school and get educated in whatever field they're trying to get into, there are a lot of practical concepts and issues that don't really get discussed as part of that education. So it really becomes important for someone to kind of peel back that cover so they can take a look at those practical things that they really need to have in their life.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I just wonder if we could use a bit of a case study approach to the call today, Justin. And let's assume that I'm the new person on the block and I'm looking to rent. This is my first time. I'm as green as the grass is long. What do I need to be aware of?
Okay, so starting out, it's important to be aware of what you need in your situation. So if you're starting out and you're just by yourself, you have options that someone who may be just starting out, but they have a spouse and or a child, those people are going to want different options.
Yeah.
So let's take the example of an individual who's kind of just on their own. You have the option of living in city center, or living further out.
Yep.
Typically, further out is less expensive than living in city center. However, you as an individual, you may look at living in kind of what's currently called a co-living space, which is basically people who are sharing a house and people are renting rooms in that house. And it's funny, people talk about that as if it's a new thing, but it really isn't.
No.
It's something that's been going on since the late 1800s and probably even a little before that. But the advantages of the co-living space is you get to live in city center, you get to plug into the social and cultural activities that are going on in the middle of the city. You also get plugged into a social and business network with the other people that are living in the house with you.
Yeah.
And you get all of that at a reduced cost from what it would be if you were renting an apartment on your own. The downside is you have to get along with these people that you're living with. So if you don't get along with them, then work the next day is going to be kind of difficult. Now if we go back to the kind of small family that's starting out,
yep.
With maybe a child or something, that co-living space is not really going to work for them. I may want to have a beer with you, but that doesn't mean I want you helping me raise my kid. So what that person would be looking for is definitely more of at least a like 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah. That's
likely going to be a little further out. That will likely have some small amenities, maybe a playground on the property, something like that. They're going to be more focused on what parking spaces come with the apartment, because they're probably going to have a vehicle because their kids, involved in after school activities or whatever that is.
Yep.
So, and the point I'm kind of driving at is your personal situation is going to drive what type of property you're going to be looking for and where that property is going to be. So really sitting down and taking stock of your situation is going to help you make that decision. Unfortunately, when a lot of people are looking for an apartment, they kind of just block out one day and go on this whirlwind tour of a bunch of properties that they found online. And it doesn't really leave them time to analyze each property and compare it to the situation that they're in so they can make the best choice. So that in the end of the day, they're kind of just forced to choosing something.
Yes.
Which may or may not be the best choice for them.
This is about planning, isn't it? About sort of having a visual idea in your mind as to what you're after. If that's the case, and I've not done this before, what are some of the questions that I should be asking myself? And of course, obviously the landlords.
Mm-hmm. So basically you're assessing how many people are you looking to house. If it's just you, that's one situation. If it's a family, that's another situation. And then where are these properties in location to the job that I'm going to have? Or if I haven't gotten a job yet, where are they in location to the employment centers that are around the geographic area where I am? How close is this apartment community to transit, public transportation? Is it close enough where I can walk? Do I have to drive? If I have to drive, is there a parking lot at the location where I would get public transportation so I can leave my car? What are the costs of public transportation? Or what are the costs of me driving my car across that bridge into the city center every day? So there's really a whole host of issues and questions that people really need to be looking at, which is why that one-day whirlwind tour is not necessarily the best idea. And we haven't even really, and these are all the questions that are just related to the individual. We haven't even really gotten to questions about a specific property and situations on the property. So when we talk about that part of it, it might be, you might go tour a property and they'll say, yeah, I understand we only have one parking space on the site, and you have 2 cars, but there's ample street parking available. Don't worry about it. Well, is there really ample street parking? Because with rents getting more expensive and people starting to live together, that street parking is starting to get taken up quite quickly, and it's turning into more of sport of competitive street parking. Is what
Oh,
started.
I think that's a global phenomenon, Justin. And
Yeah. So really, when the leasing agent says, "Oh yeah, there'll be parking," well, the leasing agent is coming and parking between the hours of 9 to 5 while he's working. When
yes.
he goes home, he's not trying to park on that street, but you are.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so really, like, and I actually advise people, come back at night, see what the property is like at night, see what the
Mm,
neighborhood looks like at night.
yeah.
And that way you'll know if you come at 7 o'clock and there's no parking on the street, you know that you are in a competitive street parking situation.
Yeah. And that's could be quite a negative situation, especially if there are paid parking zones and things like that you're not aware of.
Yeah, yeah. So actually some cities will give permits for people who are living in a certain area, to park on the street, where they don't have to abide by the hours that are posted, for parking regulations.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing is, for some cities, you have to have a lease of at least a year
Mm-hmm.
to buy one of those permits. So if your lease is 6 months, you may not qualify for one of those permits.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
with the agreements, the legal aspects of the rental arrangement. Again, using me as that case study, I've never done this before. What sort of documentation should I be looking at getting from my landlord?
Well, there's two versions of documentation: what you should get from the landlord, and also what you should bring when you're looking for
Right.
an
Yeah.
apartment.
Yeah.
So first, what you should bring is proof of income, which for most people is some type of pay stub from their job, or if they're self-employed, they'll bring tax returns. And if the tax returns don't accurately reflect your income, then you would look towards bringing bank statements with you, about 4 months of bank statements, to prove some kind of income trend,
Right.
that they can look at. Um, I would also recommend that if you're bringing bank statements, preferably bank statements from a bank that is in the country that you are dealing with. So if you're in the U.S., bank statements from a U.S. bank are more credible than
Yep.
bank
Yep.
statements from other
Abroad.
countries.
Yep.
Right, right. Yeah, or if I'm in Australia, bank statements from Australia are more credible than U.S. bank statements, that kind of thing.
And it's very much
Um,
the same process for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But in terms of documentation that you'll get from the landlord when you agree to an apartment, you should, every time you rent an apartment, you should get a lease, which is a written document
Mm-hmm.
that explains the terms under which you are being allowed to make use of this apartment. And it will lay out things like the day of the month that the rent is due, how much the rent is, where do you make that rent payment, what various ways can you make that rent payment.
Yeah.
It will also spell out your rights and responsibilities as a renter. So rights, for example, is you have access to the space, to this apartment, and they'll specify the apartment number or letter or however they do that. And then you may get rights to a specific parking space. You may get rights to a certain storage unit,
Mm-hmm.
and then access to whatever amenities are on that property. That may be a dog run or some kind of common rec room space, or a pool on the property or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so that document is very important. It's important for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
One is, if somebody else is in your parking space, that document gives you the right to get them towed and ask to have them be towed.
Oh wow.
With that document, you have no proof that that space belongs to you.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, and I can't tell you how many residents I've had who 2 months after they sign the lease, they can't find it. They don't know where.
Oh, I'm putting my hand up sheepishly.
Yeah, yeah. So, but the lease is also important because other places use it, because we already talked about like the parking permits that
Yes.
people might get from the city.
Mm-hmm.
That lease proves that you live in that particular parking zone, so you can apply for that particular permit.
Yeah.
It's important for schooling. So if you live in a specific school district, that lease proves that you live in that school district.
Mm-hmm.
Some places, sometimes you're receiving benefits that may be income based either through the state or your employer or something like that. That lease kind of proves what your housing expenses are. So it's used in a number of different ways, and that's why it's really important. Um, and anytime you go into a leasing situation and there's not a written agreement,
Mm-hmm.
it the there are different kind of legal rules that apply. But the one rule that's always in place is if the agreement is for a certain amount of money and the landlord accepts the money, they have to let you stay till the end of that term, the end of that period.
That becomes the legally binding relationship, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Yes. Once you as a landlord, once you accept money, you are bound to allow the person to stay for whatever term that money applies for.
That's fantastic feedback. Thank you so much, Justin. I wonder, you have turned the tables on the perspective. We're in support of the actual renters now. How does a renter, again, using me as the case example, how do I go and approach them and effectively interview them as to whether or not they're appropriate for me and I can trust them to do the right thing by me?
Well, your because really what we're talking about is developing a relationship and building trust.
Yeah, yeah,
And that starts from the moment you go online and you see a picture of the property. So you're online, you're doing your search, you see this picture of the property. If you go to the property and it doesn't look like the picture, run. So, like, if you're trying to establish trust, like, present a picture of what I'm actually going to get when I get there.
yeah,
Uh, and if the picture isn't accurate, then we're already starting off on the wrong foot.
yeah, yeah.
So that's where that conversation starts. Then once you get on the property, and as you're walking around the property, look for things that aren't right.
Yeah.
You know, is the landscaping being maintained? Is there trash all over the property? Do the exterior decks and patios look like they're well maintained? Is the paint falling off the property? And yeah, these sound like little things, but they may be indications of larger problems that may be going on with the building. Because a poorly maintained building is going to create problems for someone who's renting there and trying to live there and, you know, get through their daily life.
Yeah. When you were talking about the paint and the decks and being in certain condition, is that, are they lists of things that I should write down to, I guess, set that standard from the moment in time that I've walked into somebody else's property and intend to rent it, so that if something goes wrong, I can say, hey, look, you know, it looked like this when I first moved in.
So usually when you move in, there will be a checklist that the landlord gives you.
Right.
If the landlord doesn't give you one, then you can go online and find one. But really going through that checklist and documenting what might not be correct with the property. And actually, you know what? I'll go you one better. Take your cell phone, take a time-stamped video
Yes.
of the different rooms in the apartment. Make sure to note or you know, as you're panning around, kind of hesitate over areas that might be a potential problem.
Yeah.
Because that way you have a visual record of what the apartment looks like when you move in, and that way when you move out later on, they can't say, oh well, this that you broke that. You know, say, well, no, here's the video that shows it was broken when I moved in.
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes, I suspect you would be dealing with the actual owner of the property. Are there times where it's better to go through an agent?
So real estate is one of those really interesting industries where it's very fragmented.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is even the largest apartment management company will manage hundreds of thousands of apartments, but there are billions of apartments worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a lot of owners and players in that space. So renting directly from an owner does have certain benefits. One is that you're negotiating directly with the person who can make final decisions for that property.
Yeah.
Two, you can actually form a relationship with that person without all the intermediaries. Now, on the flip side of that, when you're dealing with a property management company, that property management company will typically have on staff maintenance people to come out and do repairs and all that.
Mm-hmm.
They will be available in some way, shape, or form 24/7 for whatever issue you may have. So there's a level of service that comes with living on a property that has a property management company that you may or may not get if you're dealing with a property that's run by the owner directly.
Yeah, that's fantastic feedback. Everybody who's on the call today, there's some nuggets of gold throughout the call. I wonder if something goes wrong, Justin, and I'm that guy who's just moved in and 6 months has gone by, what sort of recourse do I have if I'm dealing with the owner directly?
Recourse in terms of
what support? Is there any legal support that I can get? Is there who comes in and I guess from my side of it to help me?
It really depends on what the situation you're facing is.
Right.
So, for example, I was managing a community with 63 apartments in it, and there were I had a couple of apartments with college students in it, and they were kind of raising a ruckus and disturbing the community. And some people actually came to me and said, well, we want to move out. I mean, these were people who had lived there for quite some time.
Yeah.
So in a situation like that, the property management company will go through a process of letting the offending residents know, officially notifying the offending residents that they need to correct the situation, and then walk the other residents through the process of establishing the violation from a legal standpoint, so we can go take this information to court and then potentially evict those residents that are disturbing everyone else.
Yeah.
So a property management company would kind of go through that process on your behalf to resolve the situation, because one bad resident can drive a lot of good residents away and lower the value of the building and thus the owner's investment. So as far as situations where you're dealing specifically with the owner, if there's something that the owner should have provided that they didn't provide. So one example of that is legal, at least in the United States, the law assumes that when you rent an apartment, you're getting certain things.
Yeah.
You're getting someplace that's free of mold. You're getting a kitchen that has cooking facilities in it.
Yeah.
So I have seen situations where the stove went out, right? So the person can't cook.
Yep.
And they've notified the landlord, and the property owner is dragging their feet and all of that. So after notifying the landlord a certain number of times, one option that you can do is take your rent money, go buy a stove, put it in your apartment, and deduct it from the rent that you owe, and pay the landlord the remainder, during that month.
Yep.
Now, that means that the stove belongs to the landlord. You can't take it when you move out, but it is a means to resolve the problem, even if the landlord is not. And the landlord can't take you to court for that, because they've gotten the value of the full rent, even though it wasn't provided in cash. It was provided in part stove from my apartment, and the remainder was provided in cash.
Well, this is the thing about this whole call today, isn't it, Justin? These are rental secrets that I certainly wouldn't know. Many others certainly wouldn't know. Now, with the book itself, can we deep dive into that a little bit about how it came to be and how you actually went around about creating this wonderful book?
So when I left the job managing 200 apartments, I really kind of started thinking about how I could apply my background in a different way and in a more meaningful way.
Yeah.
And someone did suggest that I write a book, and I go into the bookstore, and all the books there are for owners, managers, and investors. So there are, in the United States, there are approximately 30 to 40 million households that are renting, and nobody's really talking to these people.
No.
And what I'm really looking at is, if I look at a piece of real estate, there are three ways to value a piece of real estate. One is how much it costs to construct it. The second way is what did similar properties around it sell for? And the third way is based on the income that the property generates. Well, the income that the property generates is from those residents. And having quality residents and retaining them keeps that income flowing. So that's where the value of the building truly comes from. So it then becomes important to have, if I'm going to have somebody living on my properties,
Mm-hmm.
it would really be great if they thought about the property in similar terms to the way that the owner thinks about the property.
Yeah, yeah.
And really learning what the language is that landlords use, the kind of the thought process that landlords go through. And that way, as a renter, when I'm negotiating with a landlord, I can actually present my case in a way that's meaningful to the landlord in their language.
Yes.
So that they can actually understand what it is I want to do and why I want to do it, and how what I want to do is beneficial to them.
Yeah. So in terms of the user of this book, the person reading it, is it one that you would open the front cover and read from start to finish, or is it something that you come back to and take bits as you need it?
It's written more from the standpoint of you read it start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
And the philosophy that I was kind of following with this book was to make it easy to use. There are plenty of books out there that are 300 pages long, full of long SAT words that nobody really wants to read.
Oh, yes. I've seen them.
So that was not really my goal with Rental Secrets. My goal with Rental Secrets was for someone to be able to sit down in 3 to 5 hours, read the book, and then go use what they learned.
Yeah.
So it's written from that perspective. So there are 10 chapters that cover different strategies that people can use to effectively reduce their rent and negotiate with landlords. At the end of each chapter, there's a recap of what the chapter covered.
Yep.
And then there's a section of questions where people can actually think through the strategies that were presented and how those strategies would apply to their personal situation.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And where can people find this book?
So the book is available through rentalsecrets.net, which is my website, and it's also available through barnesandnoble.com and itunes.com as well.
That's great. Well, look, everybody who was on the call with us today, as per normal, I will be making the links back to Justin and his wonderful book. Justin, thank you so very much for spending some time with me on the My Future Business show today.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.